Act 1. The dining room of a fairly large suburban house belonging to a prosperous manufacturer. It has a good solid furniture of the period. The general effect is substantial and heavily comfortable, but not cozy and homelike. Advice of curtain. The four Burlings and Gerald are seated at the table, with Arthur Burling at one end, his wife at the other, Eric downstage, and Sheila and Gerald seated upstage. Edna, the parlour maid, is just clearing the table, which has no cloth, of dessert plates and champagne glasses, and then replacing them with the counter of port, cigar box and cigarettes. Port glasses are already on the table. All five are in evening dress of the period, the men in tails and white ties, not dinner jackets. Arthur Belling is a heavy-looking, rather pretentious man in his middle 50s, with fairly easy manners, but rather provincial in his speech. His wife is about 50, a rather cold woman, and her husband's social superior. Sheila is a pretty girl in her early 20s, very pleased with life and rather excited. Gerald Croft is an attractive chap about 30, rather too manly to be a dandy, but very much the easy, well-bred young man and about 10. Eric is in his early 20s, not quite at ease, half shy, half assertive. At the moment, they have all had a good dinner, are celebrating a special occasion, and are pleased with themselves. Burling. Giving us the port, Edna. That's right. He pushes it towards Eric. You ought to like this port, Gerald. As a matter of fact, Finchley told me it's exactly the same port your father gets from him. Gerald. Then it'll be all right. The governor prides himself on being a good judge of port. I don't pretend to know much about it. Sheila, gaily, possessively. I should jolly well think not, Gerald. I hate you to know all about port, like one of these purple-faced old men. Burling. Here, I'm not a purple-faced old man. Sheila. No, not yet. But then you don't know all about port, do you? Burling, noticing that his wife has not taken any. Now then, Sybil, you must take a little tonight. Special occasion, you know. Sheila. Yes, go on, Mummy. You must drink our health. Mrs. Burling, smiling. Very well then. Just a little, thank you. To Edna, who is about to go, with tray. All right, Edna. I'll ring from the drawing room when we want coffee. Probably in about half an hour. Edna, going. Yes, Mom. Edna goes out. They now have all their glasses filled. Burley beams at them and clearly relaxes. Burling. Well, well, this is very nice. Very nice. Good dinner too, Sybil. Tell cook from me. Gerald, politely. Absolutely first class. Mrs. Burling, reproachfully. Arthur, you're not supposed to say such things. Burling. Oh, come. I'm treating Gerald like one of the family, and I'm sure he won't object. Sheila, with mock aggressiveness. Go on, Gerald. Just you object. Gerald, smiling. Wouldn't dream of it. In fact, I insist upon being one of the family now. I've been trying long enough, haven't I? As she does not reply with more insistence. Haven't I? You know I have. Mrs. Burling, smiling. Of course she does. Sheila, half serious, half playful. Yes, except for all last summer, when you never came near me, and I wondered what had happened here. Gerald, and I've told you, I was awfully busy at the works all the time. Sheila, same tone as before. Yes, That's what you say. Mrs. Belling. No, Sheila, don't tease him. When you're married, you'll realize that men with important work to do sometimes have to spend nearly all the time and energy on their business. You have to get used to that, just as I had. Sheila. I don't believe I will. Half playful, half serious to Gerald. So you be careful. Gerald. Oh, I will. I will. Eric suddenly guffers. His parents look at him. Sheila severely. No. What's the joke? Eric. I don't know. Really. Suddenly I felt I just had to laugh. Sheila. You're squiffy. Eric. I'm not. Mrs. Belling. What an expression, Sheila. Really, the things you girls pick up these days. Eric. If you think that's the best you can do. Sheila. Don't be an ass, Eric. Mrs. Belling. Now stop it, you two. Arthur. What about this famous toast of yours? Belling. Yes, of course. Clears his throat. Well, Gerald, I know you agreed that we should only have this quiet little family party. It's a pity Sir George and, Lady Croft can't be with us. But they are abroad, and so it can't be helped. As I told you, they sent me a very nice cable. Couldn't be nicer. I'm not sorry that we are celebrating quietly like this. Mrs. Belling. Much nicer, really. Gerald. I agree. Belling. So do I. But it makes speech making more difficult. Eric. Not too rudely. Well, don't do any. We'll drink the health and have done with it. Belling. No, we won't. It's one of the happiest nights of my life, and one day, I hope, Eric, when you've a daughter of your own, you'll understand why. Gerald, I'm going to tell you frankly, without any pretenses, that your engagement to Sheila means a tremendous lot to me. She'll make you happy, and I'm sure you'll make her happy. You're just the kind of son-in-law I always wanted. Your father and I have been friendly rivals in business for some time now, though Crofts Limited are both older and bigger than Belling and Company. And now you've brought us together, and perhaps we may look forward to the time when Crofts and Berlings are no longer competing, but are working together for lower costs and higher prices. Gerald. Hear, hear. And I think my father would agree to that. Mrs. Belling. Now, Arthur, I don't think you ought to talk business on an occasion like this. Sheila. Neither do I. All wrong. Belling. Quite so. I agree with you. I only mentioned it in passing. What I did want to say was that Sheila's a lucky girl, and I think you're a pretty fortunate young man, too, Gerald. Gerald. I know I am. This once, anyhow. Belling, raising his glass. So here's wishing the pair of you the very best that life can bring, Gerald and Sheila. Mrs. Belling, raising her glass, smiling. Yes, Gerald. Yes, Sheila, darling. Our congratulations and very best wishes. Gerald. Thank you. Mrs. Belling. Eric. Eric, rather noisily. All the best. She got a nasty temper sometimes, but she's not bad really. Good old Sheila. Sheila. Chomp. I can drink to this. Can I? When do I drink? Gerald. You can't drink to me. Sheila. Quiet and serious now. All right then. I drink to you, Gerald. For a moment they look at each other. Gerald. Quietly. Thank you. And I drink to you. and hope I can make you as happy as you deserve to be. Sheila, trying to be light and easy. You be careful, or I'll start weeping. Gerald, smiling. Well, perhaps this will help stop it. He produces a ring case. Sheila, excited. Oh, Gerald, you've got it! Is it the one you wanted me to have? Gerald, giving the case to her. Yes, the very one. Sheila, taking out the ring. Oh, it's wonderful. Look, Mommy, isn't it a beauty? Oh, darling. She kisses her, Gerald, hastily. Eric, steady the buffs. Sheila, who has put ring on admiringly. I think it's perfect. Now I really feel engaged. Mrs. Burling, so you ought, darling. It's a lovely ring. Be careful with it. Sheila, careful. I'll never let it go out of my sight for an instant. Mrs. Burling, smiling. Well, it came just at the right moment. That was clever of you, Gerald. Now, Arthur, if you've no more to say, I think Sheila and I had better go into the drawing room and leave your man. Burling, rather heavily. I just want to say this, noticing that Sheila is still admiring her ring. Are you listening, Sheila? This concerns you too. And after all, I don't often make speeches at you. Sheila, I'm sorry, Daddy. I was listening. She looks attentive, as they all do. He holds them for a moment before continuing. Burling, I'm delighted about this engagement, and I hope it won't be too long before you get married. And I want to say this. There's a good deal of silly talk about these days, but, and I speak as a hard-headed businessman who has to take risks and know what he's about, I say you can ignore all this silly pessimistic talk. When you marry, you'll be marrying a very good time. Yes, a very good time. And soon it'll be an even better time. Last month, just because the miners came out on strike, there's a lot of wild talk about possible labor trouble in the near future. Don't worry, we've passed the worst of it. We employers at last are coming together to see that our interests and the interests of capital are properly protected, and we're in for a time of steadily increasing prosperity. Gerald, I believe you're right, sir. Eric, what about war? Burling, glad you mentioned it, Eric. I'm coming to that. Just because the Kaiser makes a speech or two, or a few German officers have too much to drink and begin talking nonsense, you'll hear some people say that war is inevitable. And to that I say, fiddlesticks. The Germans don't want war. Nobody wants war, except some half-civilized folks in the Balkans. And why? There's too much at stake these days. Everything to lose and nothing to gain by war. Eric, yes, I know, but still. Burling, just let me finish, Eric. You've a lot to learn yet. And I'm talking as a hard-headed practical man of business. And I say, there isn't a chance of war. The world's developing so fast that it'll make war impossible. Look at the progress we are making. In a year or two, we'll have airplanes that will be able to go anywhere. And look at the way the automobiles making headway. Bigger and faster all the time. And then ships. Why, a friend of mine went over this new liner last week, the Titanic. She sails next week, 46,800 tons. 46,800 tons? New York in 5 days, and every luxury. and unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable. That's what you've got to keep in your eye on. Facts like that, progress like that, and not a few German officers talking nonsense and a few scaremongers here making a fuss about nothing. Now you, three young people, just listen to this. And remember what I'm telling you now. In 20 or 30 years' time, let's say, in 1940, you may be giving a little party like this. A son or daughter might be getting engaged. And I tell you, by that time, you'll be living in a world that'll have forgotten all these capital versus labor agitations and all these silly little war scares. There'll be peace and prosperity and rapid progress everywhere, except, of course, in Russia, which will always be behindhand, naturally.